Welcome to part 3 of our HDMI modded systems paired with the Retrotink 4K, and today we are covering one of my favorites, the N64. So we've got us here a Pixel FX N64 Digital modded N64 on the current firmware available for it, current testing firmware available. And we're just going to be straight up front with this. The N64 is one of the most useless systems to throw an HDMI mod in. And you're going to see why over the course of this video. So, a lot of you out there might be scratching your heads being like, wait, I thought N64 HDMI mods were supposed to make it so it's less blurry and all this other stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. If you are using an HDMI mod by itself, there's some merit to it. But if your plan is to pair an N64 with any type of scaler, be it the Retrotink 4K, OSSC, Retrotink 5X, an HDMI mod is so useless for that purpose. But anyway, let's talk about setup. So we got two N64s in use today. The one that's hooked up right now is my RGB modded N64. This is using a simple RGB mod, so this connects directly to the RGB lines on the motherboard. And for our second one, we have our N64 Digital modded N64 here. Now, the N64 Digital of this variety did include an RGB mod as well, but didn't seem fair to pit N64 Digital RGB versus N64 Digital HDMI, so I decided to use my secondary N64 for today's video. For our HDMI mod today, I am covering the Pixel FX N64 Digital. This kit has sadly been discontinued and replaced by the Pixel FX Gem for N64. And unfortunately for me, the firmware found in the N64 Digital has not been updated to the latest Pixel FX framework, so we don't have a direct mode found on the N64 Digital like we do with the N64 Gem as of this video. So unfortunately, that does mean we have to deal with some scaling and using the Pixel FX deinterlacing, which is just not as good as that found on the Retrotink 4K, and you'll see what I mean when we get to our Rogue Squadron demonstration shortly. Now, the N64 Digital and N64 Gem are not the only HDMI mods available for the N64. We have the Ultra HDMI 1 and 2. I'm not sure about their capabilities. I've never seen them in action. But N64 HDMI mods like the N64 Advance and the 64 HD do offer 240p pass-through modes, so you can get a very clean scaling out of them with minimal fuss. I unfortunately don't know how they handle 480i sources, and everyone that has one that I've asked seems to have not played 480i games to really give me a definitive answer on the subject. So if you have an answer to that, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. But anyway, going into our N64 Digital menu here, video, output resolution. For using the N64 Digital in today's video, I am going to be running it in 480p. This gives us a nice 2x scale for 240p games, and it also works for 480i games, but on occasion you will see some glitching out of things in 480i, and if that occurs, switching it up to 960p is a fix. If desired, you could run the N64 Digital at 1080p as well, but 1080p is not an integer scale of 240p or 480i, so your games will be running in a black border, which is then scaled up 2x on the Retrotink 4K. So if you don't want a black border, stick with 480p or 960p. Now going into our scaler menu here, you want to ensure that you are getting a perfect integer scale when running through the Retrotink 4K, otherwise you're going to be scaling up an imperfect image. So this is nice and easy on the N64 because it's usually just a 2x2 scale or a 2x1 scale. So if you just leave this on CRT 4x3, it typically works out correctly. And then to ensure the sharpest pixels possible, make sure horizontal and vertical interpolation are turned off. Now for our deinterlacing method for Rogue Squadron's demo, we are going to be using motion adaptive deinterlacing found within the N64 Digital. Again, it is not as good as that found on the Retrotink 4K, unfortunately. Now, one last option to set in the smoothing tab if desired. If you want to have nice sharp pixels, you're going to want to turn on the deblur algorithm. So this really cleans up the image, as you can see. But I do recommend leaving the algorithm off if you actually want things to appear like they're supposed to, instead of this weird smoothed effect. I'm not a fan personally. If you like it, I mean, go for it, but just not a big fan personally. And the last thing is just to make sure any retro FX settings in here are turned off. And there we go. So to get our RGB SCART setup done, I've got this plugged in with the retro axis SCART cable, and I am using Wobbling Pixel's razor sharp profile. So it's pretty simple to get set up in the Retrotink 4K menu here. Profiles, load from file, head down to the Nintendo 64 section. We have a good selection here, just with the original starting firmware profiles. And so here we go, Wobbling Pixels. So For this video, I used the 320x D-Blur Sharpness calibration here on my EverDrive menu because it gives us text that we can work with to make sure we get a nice crisp scaling, because as you can see in the calibration one, it is very blurry. So by closing out of this and doing auto phase a few times, you can see that it just really cleans it up. And so just going to do this until I get that text to look just how I like it. So still off just a little bit here, so hold on. I'm going to go ahead and mess with this myself. So something a little more like this in the decimation phase, I think looks a little bit cleaner. There's no more artifacting inside the lettering. Yeah, there we go. That looks perfect. Wobbling Pixel's newer profiles probably don't need you to do the decimation phase, but I'm still working with the old ones here, and they give great results, so I just haven't updated yet. But definitely something I need to do. But regardless. But again, once you have those numbers, you can just load up the 320 profile and then apply them inside that RGB component ADC menu. So for this one, I had this set to 4, and then the subphase was 236, if memory serves. But as you can see, that is razor sharp, as it promises. So again, this profile is best suited for the 320x240 titles to give it the de-blur effect. And then for Rogue Squadron, my 1480i game on display here, I used the razor sharp 640 profile, so did the same exact kind of calibration, but I enjoy the way the results turned out. If you don't have an EverDrive, you could also use text screens in Super Mario 64. They give very crisp text in the text boxes, so something easy to consider. But once you have all of your initial setup out of the way for either method, it's time to see what the results actually look like. So here are 4 games running through an RGB modded N64 and an N64 digital, and yeah, the results will pretty much speak for themselves here, so take a look.
Here we go!
Luke, I think we've got a problem. Is that my imagination, or are those Imperial probe droids dead ahead? They're attacking those? I'm clear, but my factor is down. Hey! Hey! Mos Eisley is under attack. We need to assist. I've lost R2. Maintain visual scanning. Luke, we've already got trouble. Probe droid. Take your targets and go. Good shooting. I'm hit.
All right, rogue group. The supply vehicles have begun moving. Their escort will follow shortly.
The smaller craft are the combat vehicles. Stick with the 5 transports.
Watch for enemy fighters.
imperative you stay with the supply vehicles.
Good shooting.
Commander, this is Riken. It's imperative you stay with the supply vehicles. Commander, this is Riken. It's imperative you stay with the supply vehicles.
I've lost R2.
The shuttle is clear. She'll pick up the rest of this cargo. The Rebel Alliance will appreciate those supplies, especially after we lost Yavin Base.
So as you can see, the results are practically identical between an RGB modded N64 and an HDMI modded N64 with an N64 Digital. So what's the point of doing an N64 HDMI mod if you're pairing it with a Retrotink 4K? Again, essentially none. The N64 still has noise in it, even with a digital mod. Lossless digital audio is kind of moot when you have it on an N64 with all of its compression anyway. So yeah, there's, again, really not much purpose to an HDMI mod when pairing it with the Retrotink 4K. Now again, if you are using an HDMI mod in a standalone N64, there's some merit here. You can get the de-blur effects, and it's easy to connect it to modern displays, and you get some basic scanline effects, at least in the N64 Digital and Gem. I don't know about the other HDMI kits, I don't have them. But again, I'm not saying they're completely useless and that you should avoid them. Just if you're using a Retrotink 4K, you don't have to waste the money on it. A simple RGB mod will do the trick if you have a compatible motherboard. Otherwise, you have to go for one of the more advanced RGB mods. But the best way to get the best look out of an N64 is to pair it with CRT shaders, because that is what the system expects, and that is where it truly shines. And if you pair it with CRT shaders, even a stock N64 using S-Video is more than adequate. And I have just one more bonus comparison here for you all to check out. So here is Mario Kart 64 running on the RGB modded N64 using the RetroAccess SCART cables and just plain old official Nintendo S-Video cables. Take a look. So some slight coloring differences aside, you can see that the video output is actually pretty similar when paired with a CRT filter found on the Retrotink 4K. It's actually pretty impressive. And a missing audio channel on my S-Video cables aside. I don't know what happened there, but whatever. Apologies. But as you can see, like, even if you don't want to mod your N64 at all, you're going to get good results out of S-Video. I do apologize to you in other countries that might not have S-Video capable N64s. It blows. But yeah, you don't even need a mod in N64 to really make it shine with the Retrotink 4K, and that's just the greatest aspect of the whole thing. So if you don't want to mod your console at all, a cheap $10 S-Video cable is all you're going to need to pair with the Retrotink 4K and CRT filters to just make your N64 shine. No fuss, no hassle, plug and play, good to go. If you'd like to go the RGB route and you have a compatible motherboard that can do the simple RGB mods, Voltar's amp is a great way to go, $36, 3-wire install plus the multi-out port, very simple. And then you can pair this with the retro axis SCART cable as seen in this video to get the same results. Unfortunately, if you do not have one of the earlier motherboard revisions for N64, you are going to need to go with one of the more advanced RGB mods. So something like the Tim Worthington board, if you can find them, they're still available. Or one of the N64 RGB advanced kits, not to be confused with the upcoming HDMI one that I've spoken about previously. Unfortunately, the price and availability of these kits push them more towards the beginning HDMI mod territory to begin with. So also worth considering. And if you do decide you want to go with the HDMI route because you want to use it with the Retrotink and be able to take it places without having to bring a whole scaling setup with you, the Pixel FX Gem for N64 can be picked up for $119 for the basic edition. But this does not include installation, so if you do not have the capability of installing it yourself, you are going to be paying more for an installer, and prices will vary. But if you want to go for the full-on shiny version to get the most out of your standalone experience, it is going to increase the cost by an additional $70. If you are lucky enough to still be able to find the Gamebox System 64 HD digital video output mod, that is another great way to go, especially for pairing it with the Tink 4K because of its pass-through capabilities. It can usually be found cheaper than the Pixel FX Gem, but unfortunately, due to unfortunate passing of Gamebox, this mod is becoming harder to find. And then someday soon, hopefully we'll see the HDMI versions of the N64 Advanced Kit. Now, you might find a bunch of cheap HDMI mods on Amazon or AliExpress and things like that. Really wouldn't recommend doing those. There's also the Eon Super 64. Really don't recommend doing that one. But there are your available options, so just take into consideration what you've seen in today's video, and then just plan your setup according to your needs. But that's where I'm going to leave you with today's video. Again, HDMI mods are practically useless when it comes to running them through the Retrotink 4K. If you got it, awesome. You're not going to have a bad experience with it unless you got crappy deinterlacing. But for the most part, you're going to be extremely happy. And if you don't have an HDMI modded N64, guess what? You get 99.9% the same result anyway. So huzzah! And if you don't want to RGB mod it, throw on some scan lines and S-Video it up, and you're still like 95% happy with the results. Like it's, oh my gosh. I love this system, but man, it's poor video output. Whatever. Is what it is. I'm still gonna love it. 13 games to go till full set. Whatever. Anyway, thank you so much for watching today's comparisons and discussion. Really appreciate it. Glad that any of you can find any merit to this stuff. Really means the world to me. But here at the end, couple of favorites, thumbs up, thumbs down, sub button, notification bell, and if interested, check out that Patreon and join button here on YouTube to help support the channel so we can keep bringing you content just like this and other tutorials and fun stuff. Big shout out to all of our current backers. You're amazing. Thank you so much. But until next time, my wonderful internet peeps, you all stay awesome, keep on gaming, and we will see you back next video.